All right, welcome to the daily market recap for Thursday, August 21st. Pretty choppy day after a morning gap down, where the leaders were showing strength, the laggards showing weakness, and everyone with their fingers crossed going into tomorrow's speech from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the action today of the indexes, liquid leaders, industry ETFs, then end the video with long and short setups like we do with every daily recap. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And if you want my market takes throughout the trading day, along with the live stream at the market open, you can sign up for the Discord using the link below. Jumping into it, QQQ NASDAQ, second close under the 20-day EMA. That's the first time that this has happened since we've bottomed. Little warning sign there. Down 0.46% today. Like I said earlier, basically small gap down at the open and then just chop the rest of the day. S&P 500 down 0.4%, closing back under the 20-day EMA and very small support gap. Again, we've only closed under the 20-day once. This is now the second time. But it's not all bad news. We had good rotation from mega cap tech stocks into some smaller cap companies. The growth stocks of the Russell 2000 with the ticker IWO. Good day today. Higher highs, higher lows. Closed right at that 10 and 5-day moving average, but did so on lighter volume. But it's still good to see that rotation, good closing range there. And then if we take a look at ARKK, we could see some strength there as well, only finishing down 0.24%, kind of an inside day closing upper half of that range. The downside today, Bitcoin is trading right near lows. We're taking a look at the chart IBIT, right near lows of this pullback. And with IBIT, it's under the 50-day. Bitcoin is already under the 50-day. And after that breakout failure, that's not the price action that you would really want to see here. So definitely some caution with crypto. Taking a look at the liquid leaders, we'll sort this by price percent change today. SoFi, really good action today after the undercut of the 20-day yesterday. Big wick lower and then strong close. Had follow through to the upside. Closed above the 5 in the 10-day moving average, right at the high of the day, up 3.6%. One thing that we'll go over with the industry ETFs is XLF. The financial ETF is actually showing some good relative strength. So it makes sense that one of the liquid leaders is doing so as well in that group. ALAB, extremely strong compared to other semiconductors. Reclaimed the high volume close from earnings, close above the 10-day, right at that 5-day moving average. Now, can we see a higher low pullback and kind of a little flag build out here? FUTU, one of the leading stocks in China. Chinese stocks had an awesome day. We'll cover that a little bit later, but FUTU, new 52-week highs, closing kind of lower half of the range or right at half, but still above the 5-day moving average and a new closing high. Robinhood rejected off the 20-day moving average, closed back under that. That's the second close under the 20-day, the first time that we've done that since the rally has begun. So little warning sign there. Also, today's mini rally was on lower than average volume. BE Bloom Energy, a new addition to the leaders list, continues to act extremely well. Yesterday, we had the undercut of the support gap in the 10-day, then reclaimed the 5. Today, higher highs and higher lows, ending the day up 0.67%. Next, we have Uber, basically just chopping sideways, another close over the 5-day, bounce at the 10-day, not doing anything wrong there, and really just kind of building out above the 20-day, which is nice here. Reddit up 0.2%, basically an inside day, very little volume, not much to say about that. Yesterday, we had the good reaction off the 20-day after getting pretty extended for a 3-day sell-off into that move. Now, after this consolidation, do we break to the upside or do we break to the downside? That's anyone's guess. And then NP, I really like the action out of this today. It's kind of hard to see with these gaps, but we had a kind of late day sell off where we undercut the pullback low and the support gap from the August 4th to the 5th gap up. Immediately reversed after that and closed well back over the 20-day moving average over a previous support gap. And finishing the day up 0.2%, while some of the other stocks were pretty weak. And then Nvidia, speaking of weak, semiconductors overall just weak. Rallied up to the 20-day moving average, reversed, closed back under the resistance gap and down 0.25% on the day. Jumping into the industry ETFs, MSOS, which is a new addition to that industry list, continues to show great strength, up 6.2%. Low of the day, bounced the 10-day, then closed right at the high. This is the cannabis ETF, and it really is one of the better looking charts in the market right now. Gold miners, GDX, really like the action yesterday. We had the ugly close on Tuesday under the 5 and the 10-day moving average. Whenever you get an ugly close like that, the best thing you could do is gap up the next day and follow through to the upside. That's what it did. And then today we had higher highs, higher lows, and a new 52-week high close. XBI, I have a position in LABU, and that is still giving me no trouble. Just a little pullback to the 10-day. Today, this morning, had a little bit of weakness as well with a gap down, but eventually we climbed back through yesterday's close, the high, and the 5-day moving average, closing into this resistance gap. And overall, just nice action out of this as we get rotation from mega cap tech stocks. KWEB, I talk about this every daily recap. Just a 3.5 year base for Chinese equities, right on that breakout point in good strength today. We saw XPEV. Let me search that up. XPEV, awesome move today, up 11.6%. Really big base here, massive volume. We already covered FUTU. We also have what was it? PDD, which very constructive base here as well. And then Alibaba, which reports in a little over a week. Actually, a little bit of weakness in Alibaba. If that starts to participate, that KWEB ETF is ready to break out. So we'll see how Alibaba reports in a couple days or a week or so. Other groups to watch, financials, really good undercut of the 20-day EMA and support gap today. We did close a little bit lower. We also closed with a gap down, but above the 5-day moving average. And overall, I really like how this is basing out. So if the market can kind of go through a pullback or consolidation and stabilize, I think this theme is something to focus on going forward. Some weakness, cybersecurity. Well, IGV software just going sideways. Cybersecurity with a gap down, even though it closed well. Semiconductors, another like tested the resistance gap below the 20-day, failed at that area, and then closed lower. So basically, like an inside day today. Um, if we gap down or test that 50-day moving average, that would be my line in the sand. Otherwise, this group can unwind a bit. And then solar stocks had a gap down with CSIQ's earnings, still above the 10-day moving average. So let's see when this pullback gets supported for this theme. Before we jump into the long setups, we have a update for the NAAIM active investors exposure, and it's hot. They bought the dip on Wednesday with every cent they had. Exposure jumping from 85% up to 98%. When it gets this overbought, who's left to buy? And going into the meeting with Federal Reserve Powell, that speech, and if everyone's long and we're going into kind of a binary event, a news-driven event, if people need to leave the market, if there's like bad news interpreted in Powell's speech, there's going to be a lot of money that's going to have to leave all at the same time. And when that happens, we get some pretty directional moves. So I really was hoping with the sell off on Wednesday, we would see exposure drop, in which case, then there's money on the sidelines to come back in after some hopefully good news from Jerome Powell. But that's not the case. Exposure level jumped from 85 to 98. I've talked about how my threshold is 95%, usually above that. And breakouts don't work as well. And when you get below the 20-day moving average, we've never had the NAAIM reading over 95%. So we've never had active investors exposure over 95%, while the NASDAQ index has been under the 20-day EMA over the last 5 years. So to me, like because it hasn't happened, we don't have data to suggest what will happen. But mentally, I'm just preparing myself. If everyone's already long and we're already under the 20-day EMA with some leaders breaking down, any bad news here, and I think we could see some pretty gross action. But just like I gave short setups when the market was in an uptrend and trading nicely, I'm still going to put some long setups out there that we can go over. SoFi is the first one, kind of going back with that XLF financial strength. Just looking for a pullback into the 20-day moving average and support gap here at 2250. Then I would have a 2 or 3% stop on this one. Ideally, this happens over the next like couple days instead of just like a gap down and retest. I want to see volatility contract, not just more volatility coming into the name. But given where the market's at and where exposure's at, I'm not trying to buy anything on strength, only on weakness or shakeouts. So into that 20-day moving average for SoFi. NP, same. I'm just looking for another retest of that support gap that we tested today. Maybe you could take it on a 20-day EMA, like undercut, but and then stop would be today's low. Um, but I would rather be a little bit more patient with the setups given the environment. NBIS continuing to act relatively well. The pullback has come on lower volume into that HVC from the gap up there, and then into the support gap as well. We look for an undercut and reclaim of that area. Stop would be the 20-day moving average. SE, we're talking about international stocks acting well. This is in that theme. Continues to trade above that 5-day EMA. Any pullback into the HVC into the 10-day moving average would be buyable versus the low of this pullback. APLD, extremely strong action. Great response of the support gap undercut yesterday, and then follow through today. Higher highs and higher lows. Close above the 5-day moving average. This one really yesterday was the buy point, the low risk spot. We'll just wait for another test of that area and the 20-day moving average as it catches up in that into that zone, especially if the market's pulling back, then we have a spot to manage risk against. BE, uh, some of the AI energy stocks have been pretty weak, especially like nuclear, but BE has not shown any of that weakness. Um, Allowing this to kind of flag into that support gap low, let that 20-day EMA catch up. Maybe not tomorrow, but over the next week or so, that's the spot that I'm really watching to size up. Wolf, this had the highest volume, at least in a year, probably ever. Last week on the 14th, where we closed up 59.5%, closed right at the high of the day. Next 2 days, we followed through to the upside. And then since then, we've just been pulling back into the HUC, into the 5-day moving average, and letting that volatility contract. A retest of that 875 area is buyable versus, I would say that the 5-day, or sorry, the low of the pullback at like 850. A couple more days, letting that 10-day moving average catch up would improve the setup, but it's still something that I'm watching. DraftKings, really good action overall. I love this base. It's not quite a double bottom base because you want the right side of that shakeout to undercut the previous low. We did not get that, but overall, just still a nice base being built. Watching for a pullback into the support gap, into the 10-day moving average versus either the 20-day or the pullback low here. VSAT, this was on the watch list earlier in the week. We didn't get the breakout to the upside there. We had a little pullback into the 5-day. Yesterday, bounced at the 10-day and support gap. Today, we pushed higher back through the 5-day, closing well. Now, just looking for another retest of the 10-day moving average and support gap there at like 2550. Finally, we have OUST. Um, Really strong action off the lows from $6 up to $36. Now pulling back in the 20-day moving average. Yesterday, we had that undercut of the 20-day and support gap. Followed through a little bit today, but more so just volatility contraction today with the indexes doing nothing. Now just watching for a retest of that 20-day moving average and that support gap low versus the low of the pullback. On the short side, couple names here that will probably catch you by surprise. Just because we have such heavy positioning on the long side with NAAIM and coming into the week at least with the COT data for the Nasdaq, going into this event with Powell, if we have any bad news and the market gets scared, we've got a lot of exposure on uh, on the long side that would need to be unwound. Some of these names, Robinhood starting off, two closes under the 20-day EMA, still not doing anything horribly wrong, but uppercut the 20-day and close below. We have a nice consolidated price action here the last like day and a half, I'd say, into that area. So looking for a break of today's low, stop would be today's high on this, and just a visit to the 50-day it would be like the starting point to watch for buying to come back in, or the high volume close from earnings. Palantir is next. Gapped up, like was trading up overnight, and then had a small gap up in the morning, uppercut and fail of the resistance gap, and then closed basically flat on the day. A little late day sell off. I want to say this is also down after hours. But this is another one where just a little uppercut and fail of that resistance gap is a potential short. Or if you want to wait for more confirmation through today's low, through that 50-day moving average, uh, that's a spot to kind of add on to the short. I would rather short a little bit into strength and then add on weakness versus putting my whole position here, but that's just me. VRT, we've talked about semiconductors acting relatively weak. This is one of the weaker in the bunch, already losing the 50-day moving average. We had a rally into the resistance gap and then a kill bar gap down through the 20-day, another rally into that area that failed, another gap down, a fourth gap down, and then today had higher highs and higher lows, but closed in the red after testing that resistance gap area. Uppercut and fail of the 50-day and resistance gap high would be the entry. Stop would be like 2 or 3% there. Maybe that aligns with the 10-day moving average. That would be ideal. Otherwise, through today's low, for me, that would be kind of like more of an ad spot than a spot to start a short position, but some weakness here out of VRT. Dave has been putting in lower highs and lower lows here, kind of in a do or die spot. Good volatility contraction today. So if you wanted to say, Nick, I want to take to this to the long side, I would be fine with that as long as you use today's low and the support gap low. And then if you want to take it to the short side, little uppercut and fail of the 5-day moving average and gap zone from yesterday's gap down, that would be my preferred entry, or through today's low. Because it's so tight, either one kind of works. But through today's low, and this should accelerate to the downside. Roblox, we had that massive move followed by an extension into earnings. That extension got sold off. We gapped down the next day, rallied back in, showing that there were sellers still in that zone. And then we had the lawsuit come out last week, I think it was, or is that Monday? No, Friday. Last Monday. Sorry, last Friday, the lawsuit came out. Since then, we haven't been able to rally at all. A little bit of weakness today with a gap down, closed at the 50-day moving average, just through today's low in the 50-day, and this can accelerate to the downside. Uppercut and fail of the 5-day and gap zone, also a spot that I'd be watching for. But with this, I'm fine with shorting this on weakness. Something I'm not fine shorting on strength would be NEGG. Today, we had the uppercut and fail of the resistance gap and previous highs, closing right at the low of the day. This is something that I want to build into a short on weakness, a name that's run from $3 up to $130, one of the more extended stocks in the market. And after we took out the highs but weren't able to push, that's a big sign that momentum in this name is drying up. Now we just look for follow through to the downside, either a gap down, opening range break, a morning rally that loses the VWAP, anything like that. But do not fight the intraday VWAP. If price comes back through that, this is a name that obviously can squeeze to the upside. Don't need to be fighting the trend. You want we got some evidence that momentum is has dried up, but if you get evidence that momentum's coming back in this name, it's not something to fight. Next two, we have quantum names, IONQ, QUBT. You could add RGTI there. That's sitting on the 50-day. Um, we had just volatility contraction today. I wouldn't really call it relative strength, even though it finished up on the day. Overall, I would just say that we're contracting into the support gap. I would look for a gap down and accelerated move to the downside to short. Little uppercut and fail the last two highs, also a spot to watch for, but This and QUBT are two names that I would try to short on weakness instead of strength, just because we've started to see this group come under pressure. Momentum's been drying out of the market. And if we get bad news out of Jackson Hole, there's no reason that these should continue higher. GRRR, really just wedging up into that 200-day moving average now. This was a name that had a big move in like November, December of last year, a bigger move in March, and then really has not gotten back to that spot. So relative weakness from that point, losing the 50-day in July, losing the 200-day at the end of July, and now we're just wedging into that area with some higher upper wicks, a gap down. And now we're trading right at the 200-day. So good tight risk management here. Little uppercut and fail of the 200-day or this gap zone would be fine for an entry, or gap down, loss of today's low. Then your stop's the 200-day moving average. Last one we have is DFDV. This is another name that has already kind of topped here. Lower high, sold off. And this is a name that went from 54 all the way down to 13, rallied up into the 50-day moving average and resistance gap, reversed at that spot, gap down. Now we're just wedging into the 200 or the 20-day. You can see with today's candle, we attempted to rally, got pushed back down, closed right near the lows. Just through today's low is a short versus the 200-day moving average on this name. So that's going to be the market recap for Thursday, August 21st. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And if you want my market takes throughout the trading day, along with a live stream at the market open, you can sign up for the Discord using the link below. Good luck tomorrow. If you're long or short going into Jerome Powell's speech, make sure you don't ruin your weekend either way. All right, take care. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you guys on Saturday's video.